right, what is up? Hello there, this is Mike Deiure. How's everybody doing? Welcome to the lesson. And looks like we got people piling in here, so do me a favor, let me know if you could hear me, see me, and all that fun stuff. Kind of letting people kind of join in, get started, and then we'll be kicking things off in a minute or two while everyone just kind of joins and making sure that everybody could see me, hear me, and all that fun stuff. And if you're here, go ahead and say hi in the chat. I can kind of see you here looking over and chat with you live. So we'll be interacting and having some fun doing some really cool guitar stuff. Hey, Summer, how you doing? Cool. Everything sounding good? Awesome. Very cool. Awesome. All right, guys, what's up? So I'm Mike Deiure from rockguitarpower.com as well as superguitarlicks.com. So I've been teaching guitar for over 15 years, and I'm super excited tonight because this is the first ever live lesson that I've done online. And it's brought to you by all the great people over at Tivamo. So Tivamo is a new service, or they've been around for a bit, but they're really kicking into high gear and doing some exciting stuff with allowing people like me and anybody else out there to share what they do as experts in their fields, to teach, to do whatever you want online. And I'm really excited to start kicking this off, and I'm already getting a lot of good feedback from working with this. So it's my biggest thing that I wanted to dive into the online world was that I could help more people learn and practice and get better as guitar players. And things like this are really what are allowing me to do that more and more. So it's super exciting. So I'm kind of going back and forth between reading your comments and making sure I kind of hang out here with you in front of you. But what I'm planning to do today is cover a bunch of topics that people are wanting to know about for guitar. So I sent out a survey and got some ideas about what you guys wanted to learn. And I got a couple really good topics that people seem to want to know most about. A lot of those had to do with bar chords, which I'm going to cover today. And then also, people asked a lot about scales and modes. And those are a little bit more advanced techniques. So I'm going to cover a little bit on both of those topics. And then definitely, open everything up to just asking me whatever you want to know and learn, and I can cover it here. So we're going to hang until about 9 o'clock. I'm planning on it going later than that. I don't have any other agenda after this, so we'll hang for a while. And let's see, making sure. All right, sounds good. Cool. Awesome. So, yeah, so we're going to be tackling a bunch of topics, but we're going to start off by talking about bar chords. And one more thing to mention before I kick into that, and I'll mention this at the end too. So the guys at Tivamo, really excited about this. I already set up another lesson like this for next Wednesday. So if you use the same link you signed up to this one, you could go ahead and sign up for next Wednesday at the same time. I'll probably be doing one of these on the weekend to kind of fit other schedules. Another thing to check out though, tomorrow night actually, I have one of my close friends and one of the most amazing musicians I know, Tegan Ward. She's actually going to be doing a live performance for about an hour. Which is also at 8 p.m. Eastern. So if you just go to the Tivamo website, tivamo.com, T-I-V-A-M-O, you should see her on one of the featured artists there. And one other thing to check out, if you're here for guitar, definitely check out Ed Eason. Ed is how I found out about this service. Good friend of mine now, and he's actually Carrie Underwood's main guitar player. You will want to check his sessions out. He is an absolute wealth of knowledge. He's sharing everything from what it's like to be on tour, playing at the Grammys, on the big stage, from guitar lessons to gear and everything else. So check out Ed Eason. He's out on you'll find him on the homepage as well. All right, cool. So as I'm going to jump in and we're going to start giving you some topics on bar chords and some techniques on how to make learning and playing bar chords a little bit easier. But feel free to start typing in your own questions and what you want to learn into the chat box, and I'll get a little list of things to kind of cover. And as we kind of dig in and finish the two topics I want to cover, we'll take your questions and help you out however you go. The other thing too is I'm going to be referencing a lot of stuff from both my websites because there is a wealth of knowledge on there. If you're not already a member for Rock Guitar Power or Super Guitar Licks, go check it out. There's a free trial there. You can get in for free and check everything out. But if I mention a lot of things to reference on the website, it's only because we only have so much time here. And if you want to kind of check out more ideas and lessons and details about learning it, those are definitely the places to go. So let's jump in. So bar chords, more not necessarily a beginner thing, beginner to intermediate. Bar chords are one of the things that's going to open up the ability to play just about any song that you want to play. Bar chords are movable, which makes the ability to play things a lot easier, and it opens up the doors to play a lot of things. Most people, when they first start out learning guitars, open chords, down in this position. All right. Bar chords are what allow us to play the same chords as well as other chords anywhere, and they're all movable, and that's really important. The other thing that's super important about guitar is that it's a very pattern-oriented instrument. You'll hear me talk about that a lot. And bar chords are one of the things that starts letting you into the world of patterns. So the cool thing about it, if you don't know what a bar chord is, I'm not going to get too into the very basics of it, because I want to talk about the techniques of how to play them better. But a bar chord, let's say we have a G open chord, which is like that, all right? So if I want to play it as a bar chord, we have a G major bar chord, which looks like this. So I'm going to start off with my first finger on the 1st fret, 3rd and 4th fret on, or actually both on the 5th fret on the A and D string. My middle finger goes down on the 4th fret of the G string. And then the reason why it's called a bar chord is because my first finger is barring, okay? So, but once I have this shape, it's now movable. So if I take the same shape and move it up a whole step, it's an A major, okay? So as you can imagine, the cool thing about these now is once I get it down good in one spot, all I have to do is move it. And now it becomes that same chord, only a different root note. So this note is A, so now we got A major. So instead of changing from like G to A with open chords, I'm going to now be able to take one chord shape and just move it, and I have the same shape. So if you're already, now again, this is a little bit more of a beginner concept, but it's super powerful, and it's going to shed light on a lot of other things that we'll talk about. So here's some techniques and the issues that people have when they first learn bar chords is to getting every note to sound out and sound good, okay? So bar chords, along with being the first introduction to movable shapes and things that open things up, it's also usually your first introduction into things that makes your hand really hurt, because these shapes are a little bit more complex than your open chords. So one of the things I like to tell people about bar chords is it's a lot like doing a push-up, only holding it right in the middle. And if you do a push-up and you kind of lock your arms out, or if you rest on your chest, you could do that all day long. But if you sit there and try to do a push-up with your arms like this, pretty soon everything starts shaking and everything's just going to get tired. That's exactly what's happening with your fingers when you're holding this shape, all right? So if you're newer to guitar, you're new to bar chords, a lot of what you got to just keep in mind mentally is that you're developing new muscles, and it takes time to strengthen them, and it's not going to happen overnight. So if you are working on them, don't fret, keep working on it, and give yourself a rest. If you start feeling really sore or just tired, take a break, practice some scales, do something else, okay? But come back to it and just realize over time how much easier they get if you're practicing them. So here's some topics or some techniques to make them easier, all right? Now, again, these are movable. We're just going to take this major bar chord shape and start it on the 5th fret. We're going to talk about how to expand these shapes more in a second too, but here's some basic understandings. A lot of people start with power chords first, which I recommend. A power chord is just if you play the 1st fret on the big string, and then you're going to play the ring finger and pinky on 2 frets higher on the next 2 strings, okay? So in this case, we're on the 5th fret. We're going to put our first finger on the 5th fret, ring finger and pinky go on the 7th fret of the next 2 strings. So then, the first thing I want to think about that's going to make playing these types of chords easier, whenever possible, you want to keep your fingers together and tight. So if you notice my ring finger and pinky right now, all right, these are going to be nice and tight together, all right? They're not going to kind of open up and wobble. The second they're not together, your fingers are able to wobble around, all right? And that's going to cause things to get tricky. So what you want to do is keep your fingers tight like this. You can see how they're right on top of each other. When I do this, it's as if my 2 fingers become one big finger. So I'm resting those together and I can get a really tight feel on it. The other thing is you want to keep these fingers curved, okay? You don't want to come in flat because then they're going to touch the strings below them and not make them ring out. So if you start there, my middle finger is going to come in here, all right? Now if you notice, my middle finger is really arcing well. It's going to point straight into the fretboard. Again, I don't want this knuckle to come back or my wrist to come back. So if we start with these 4 notes, all right, those are pretty easy because I'm not really barring yet, all right? Now what happens is the bar comes in with my first finger, and that's going to lay flat. Here's where it gets tricky, and here's where most people could use some guidance, okay? A lot of times when people start off, what happens is their finger in this back knuckle will come back, all right? My thumb kind of comes up, and everything pulls towards me, all right? This is exactly opposite of what you want to happen. What happens here is that if you look at my finger from this point of view, or if you just do this and make a little bit of an arc, you can see that the skin on the inside of your finger becomes very soft and cushy. Now that's not going to help push down a guitar string. So you want that to be as straight as possible. And when I do this, I could really feel the tension, in the back of my hand. But that's exactly what you want to have happen, all right? The other thing, bring your thumb down, all right? You don't want it way up high like this. You want to bring it down and push your wrist out, okay? When I look at my finger from this point of view, what I'm seeing is a straight line. And this back knuckle is shooting up, almost like a ski slope, all right? Kind of like this. So if you're looking at your hand, rule 1 should be as straight as a pencil. So if you see this curling back, push that wrist out and just hold it. Again, this is that muscle tension that's going to feel like you're kind of tense and whatnot, but it's exactly what needs to happen to really get this sounding good. So once you get all that, now you can kind of start off and just see what you get. Now a lot of times, you might get something like that, where the 2 notes are not ringing out. Then it's just a matter of really kind of moving your fingers around and find out how to get those to ring out, okay? Making sure everyone's still there. Cool. All right, so the thing is, when I get this nice and straight, now I'm getting all the notes out. See what I mean? All right, so now we got our chord ringing out good. Again, if you're not there yet, just keep working at it slowly and try to find out what works. For every 10 times you try, you might get 1 sounding good, and then, take that as a win, all right? Then work on it again the next day and see if you get a few more of them that are clean. Eventually, you just get the hang of it, all right? You also, you might want to practice them up a little bit more where the frets are closer together, because the more I move down, the stretch becomes bigger, but it also helps your fingers kind of work out and get stronger. So there's some basic tips on the, getting that initial bar chord shape to sound better and cleaner. Again, that's a typical thing that, when people are first introduced to bar chords, is what happens. It's kind of like, how do I get this to sound good when it's like, when like that. And a lot of times you just need to push. When you're using all your fingers, you got to really think about pushing hard with all your fingers. So if you're down there and you're pushing hard, maybe you're not thinking about your pinky because you're trying to get everything else good. So over time, you're just going to mentally think about pushing hard and testing them out, okay? So try those tips on those bar chords to get them to sound better. The other thing that we could talk about with bar chords that's really cool is just the main different types that there are, okay? And the 2 are major and minor chords, all right? Those are the 2 most popular chords that you'll encounter. 7th chords are also very popular, both in blues, rock, and many other styles. But major and minor are what you want to start off with. And there's a lot of bar chords out there. The main ones you need to know: major, minor. A 7th bar chord is super helpful as well. And then also major 7th and minor 7th are super popular too for more jazzy stuff. But you could do some really, really cool things with them. All right, but major, minor. All right. The other thing is that these chords are basically, for the most part, rooted on the big E string or the A string. You could certainly do other types of bar chords, but the only ones you want to really worry about when you're getting these down are the 2 shapes that happen on the big string and the A string below it. Okay, and we have a major chord on the big string, which looks like this. Again, I'm not going to kind of count all the notes out and all that. These are on Rock Guitar Power, I believe in volume 1 or 2. Let me double check which ones they're on. But if you go to rockguitarpower.com, in the volume 1 course, probably volume 2 course, I believe it is. I'll verify in a sec here. I have the whole lesson on bar chords and show you the major minor shapes so that you could really dig in. But even if you Google them, you'll be able to find the shapes pretty quickly. Again, they're pretty universal, although there are some variations. Yeah, so it's in the volume 2 program there. And so basically what you have is a major chord on the big E string, a minor chord on the big E string. And when you're doing these, make sure you hear that minor sad sound there, right? Okay? So the other thing is then on the major chord, or on the A string, you have a major chord, and you have a minor chord. And again, they're movable. The note that the first finger's on is the name of the chord. So right now, if I'm on the 5th fret of the A string, that note is D. So now I have a D minor chord, okay? So that's kind of, in a nutshell, the bar chords. And again, everybody's going to be at a different level with these. So let's see what Summer says. I have a hard time with bar chords because my fingers are so small. Can't seem to hold the main finger tight enough. When you say main finger, are you talking about your first finger, Summer? Probably, yes. Cool. So yeah, like I said, that is a very, very common thing, and it is just a matter of really building a lot of muscle. One thing you can do too is practice just starting off with your first finger, okay? You could do this both ways. Start with your first finger, but all I'm trying to get is the first string and the last 2 strings. Okay, that's one place to start. What I want to do is, if I get that sounding good, first of all, just move that around and practice, because your muscles have memory, and if you get it to where it works, your fingers will eventually memorize that. The other thing you could do is actually start without your first finger and put the rest of the chord shape. Again, we're just going to take a major bar chord, for example, to start off with. So if I get these 3 notes down, and let's say that's good, the next thing I want to try to do is don't move these fingers. See if you could isolate these fingers and just get the first finger to go where it needs to go, all right? And then try to get those notes down. This might work for you, it might not, but it's something to try. I've had students had success with this. Keep in mind, there's usually not one smoking gun thing that's going to kind of get you there. A lot of it is just that muscle development and pressure and practicing it and kind of coming back to it. But again, push that wrist out, because if your finger curves in the least bit, you're going to get frustrated because it's not going to have enough solid bone sticking out to push the note in. And again, the more you straighten it, the more you're going to feel it hurting or kind of, be intense. You just got to work through that. It gets easier, trust me. A lot of times, too, when people get very experienced, if you're watching a professional player, someone that just knows how to play, keep in mind that they've done this for so long that they know how to relax and make it sound good. That's the whole thing of people making it look easy. So when you're doing this, make sure that you gauge your own progress. Don't try to make it be like, today it's not sounding good and tomorrow it's not sounding good, so I'm not doing better. Record yourself. It's something I tell all my students to do. Record yourself. There's no excuse nowadays with phones not to be able to have something to record yourself, either audio or video. You'll be surprised because a lot of people develop slowly, and you don't realize after a month of practice how much better you've gotten. So, because you're just kind of checking in with yourself day by day. But if you look back, you'd be surprised. But yeah, so that's a big thing. Again, keep that wrist out. Think about that finger being as straight as can be, and just work with that. The other thing too, a lot of times too, if you're working on a guitar that might have super high action, which is where the strings, are high off the fretboard, that's obviously going to make it harder. And depending on your guitar, guitars can be set up to be played easier. Electric guitar is a lot easier to change and to kind of tweak. Acoustic guitars can be modified too, though. Usually you'll want to bring that to your guitar shop. Bring it to a guitar shop, either type of guitar anyways, just to make sure you don't kind of mess it all up. But one thing that could be happening, again, if you don't have a guitar that's set up properly, the strings could be really high and it can be very uncomfortable to play. So, cool, awesome. All right, do you guys have any other questions on bar chords? I'm going to move over to talking about some scales and modes and get all deep with some cool technical stuff. But If you guys have any other questions or things you're working on with modes, let me know. Sorry, with bar chords. Nope. All right, cool. So we're going to jump in and talk a little bit about scales and modes. And, hang on. After learning on guitars with high action, I feel like I push my wrist out a bit too much. Is that okay? Yeah, that's all right. Again, if it's not hurting you, I wouldn't worry about it. Technique-wise, it's, again, I think this is always usually good. In most cases, this isn't going to hurt you. It's going to help you. Unless you're doing it all day long and all the time. If you have pains or you feel sore, you might try to relax a little bit. But it's actually a very good way to develop muscle by learning on a guitar with higher action or even an acoustic guitar with thicker strings. That's something else that people encounter, is that maybe they'll get an acoustic guitar as their first guitar. And acoustic guitars have thicker strings, which are tighter and tenser and a little bit harder to push down sometimes. So that could be another reason why. But, I don't really think it's going to hurt you too much. Yep, cool, awesome. So in that case, just kind of keep doing what you're doing. Again, it's a good way to, if you ever go back to a guitar that's not with high action, you'll be like, oh, this is amazing, That's why, one of the things about this guitar, this is my kind of speed demon, if you will. It's not always the most soulful guitar, but it has a super flat neck, and it's just built for speed. It's got thin strings. The other reason why I'm using it tonight is because actually it's a darker wood and the color's dark, and it actually looks better on the camera. I have my Strat here, but it's kind of boomy and glary, so this is kind of what I like using for playing my fast technical stuff. And I'm going to play a tune or two for you later. And I got some of my acoustic too, so we'll play some stuff for you there too. All right, cool. So we're going to jump in now and talk about scales and modes. Modes are one of the things, if you're not familiar, and this is definitely getting into the intermediate to advanced topics of playing guitar. I love playing lead and soloing and improvising and jamming. Super Guitar Licks is really all about, lead playing and all that stuff. But actually on Rock Guitar Power, we have two courses that really cover scales and modes. One is called the Modes on Guitar, and the other is called Soloing and Lead Playing Program. So here's the first thing I like to tell students and people when they hear about the modes. And also, this is the two things that I tell them about when I teach the modes. So basically, there's two ways to kind of utilize the modes. And if you don't know what the modes are, I'll go into it briefly. Again, it can get kind of deep, but I don't want to go there. We're going to keep it simple for everybody out there. So there's two ways to utilize the modes. One is so that you're turning the whole guitar neck into one scale, essentially, one pattern, or a bunch of patterns, but you're always going to be playing in the same key signature. This is the type of method that I like talking about and teaching, because for rock, everything but jazz, it's very applicable, all right? Jazz music is a lot more complex than most, and that's where the modes really, shine when you utilize them the other way, which is where a certain scale or mode will work over a certain type of chord, okay? This gets dorky pretty quickly, but the thing that makes it very difficult, and that's why jazz is its whole different, world of music, is that you have to know what scale goes with what chord and be able to change that quickly, all right? It's a very complex thing. I'm not a jazz player, and I never really dug into it as much. But the thing about the other way that I like teaching the modes is that basically you're going to take one scale pattern. Let's say we're going to start off with a major scale pattern. Okay, we have a C major scale pattern. The first thing that I like to talk about that's a pretty easy concept for people to grasp is what I like to call, or what's called, relative major and minor. So basically it says that every major scale has a minor scale that's relative to it. It shares the exact same notes. To find that, you go 3 half steps down from the major key. So let's say we're in C major. Okay? To find the relative minor, you're going to go down 3 steps, 1, 2, 3, or down in pitch 3 frets. That note is going to be A in this case. So A minor and C major are what we call relative. So basically, if I play an A minor scale, all right, or if I play a C major scale, I'm actually playing the same exact notes. I'm just starting and ending on a different note. Let's go put this into practice, and I'll show you how you could utilize it to open up the fretboard to play a lot of cool things. So I'm on Rock Guitar Power right now, and there is a program in there called the Guitar Pro Jam. And this is where I teach, basically I'll teach a jam, a basic groove, and teach you a whole bunch of different really cool licks. I teach you how to play the groove, and then teach you how to solo over it. There's a ton of really awesome grooves, backing tracks, and everything else. They're on both sites, but right now we're going to call up a Pro Jam. Let's do one in the key of, let's see, have one in, I want to find an easy key to kind of work with. Alright, let's do this one here. Alright, we're going to do one called Funky C Minor Jam, okay? So this groove is in the key of C minor. So let's check this out. C minor, I'm on C, okay? The relative major and minor idea works both ways. So if I'm on the minor and I want to find the major, I'm going to go up 3 frets. 1, 2, 3, which is going to be E flat, okay? So essentially what we could say is that E flat major and C minor are relative. They share the same notes. So if you know a major scale pattern and if you know a minor scale pattern, you could then use those to jam out. Let's hear it in action. So I'm going to play the backing track. And what's up, Rick? How we doing? All right, so here's the jam. I'm going to go ahead and play it and then jam along to it for a sec. Okay, so real quick, let me illustrate what I was doing. So basically, we're in C minor, so I could use a C minor scale, okay? And if we're talking about modes, the minor scale is what's known as the Aeolian mode, okay? The names are, I think, Greek, and they're all really cool, exotic names, which we don't need to get into now. But Aeolian is also the 6th degree, so that's the minor scale. Now, the major scale, again, like we said, is E flat, which is also called the Ionian mode. Now, the way that I like making the modes applicable for people and to simplify the idea of them is that I know that if I'm playing in Ionian or major, I could also play Aeolian, which is the minor, but I have to make sure, and here's the key, that I have to move to the right starting note. And that's where it gets a little technical, but not too much. The main idea is that, again, guitar is very pattern-oriented. So we have a minor scale pattern. And now I'm playing, again, in a minor scale or a major scale, you have 7 notes. I'm playing 3-note per string patterns. There's your minor scale. So if I play C minor, but then if I move up to E flat major, both will work. So what I've now done is doubled the amount of space I could play on the fretboard. All you need to know is the starting note and then where or what pattern to play. So the way you could understand the modes here, and let me know if I'm kind of totally losing you guys or if you guys are understanding this. So the way that I'm going to utilize these modes is by saying first you got to memorize the scale pattern for that mode, all right, and then just know how it relates to all the other modes. Again, it's using the same concept of relatives. So if I know my key is C minor, I know that if I go up 3 frets, I could play my major scale, okay? And also the pentatonics work for this as well. The program called Soloing Lead Playing, that focuses on this concept of using pentatonic scales. And pentatonic, there's 5 notes in a scale, so basically there's 5 different patterns that, if I learn them and just move around and know where to start them, I've now shifted how much of the guitar neck I could use. And now again, I like to teach from the aspect of having fun and really opening things up quick. if a lot of times people, that's all they want out of guitar and learning to play guitar. If people really want to dig into the theory and know exactly what's going on as more of a musician and being able to do this by reading music, I love going there with people, but it's usually a little bit too intense, you know, to get people attracted to this whole thing. So the idea of what I'm teaching right now and how this applies is just to learn some patterns, how the patterns relate, and you'd be surprised at how much it opens up the guitar neck. You'd also be surprised at how many awesome musicians don't have a clue as to what they're doing. And this is one of the reasons why. You know, a lot of times in guitar, because it's so pattern-oriented, if you know your pattern and you know where to start it, you could just then be creative in coming up with different licks, okay? So, for example, let me go ahead and jam on this a little bit more. Now, what I'm going to do is just use these two scales. I'm going to use C minor and then E flat major, all right? I'll use the pentatonics and I'll use the regular major minor scales. The other thing is that you could use the octaves, okay? So if we have C here, although it's pretty high, you know, we can get way up here and really use this part of the neck, okay? So let's try this out. I'm going to jam for a sec. So again, this is on the track called Funky C Minor Jam. Let's see what happens when we jam a little bit more on it. Alright, cool. So, again, just using two scales, and they're relative. So now, let's introduce one new pattern, and we'll call it the Phrygian mode, or Phrygian scale, which is based on the third degree. So, again, without getting too into the nuts and bolts of it all, if we're on the major scale, or the major key, or the major note, which again, in this case, the major was E flat, okay? You're going to come up to the third fret of that scale, meaning the third degree of that scale. And that's where you start your Phrygian pattern. So in this case, we're on G, okay? So if I play what's known as a G Phrygian scale, okay, again, this has like one of those, the Phrygian's really cool because it's got, if you notice, it's got that little Middle Eastern sound to it, okay? So, if I play G Phrygian, I'm playing the exact same notes as E flat major and C minor. So now I have one brand new place to start on my guitar neck and play a whole new scale. Once I learn the pattern and get used to it, okay, now it becomes part of my arsenal of different places I could play in the neck and come up with new licks and create really solid flows. And G's great in this case because I could start it down here at the 3rd fret, which is a G, or I could shoot right up to the 15th fret and play it up here. Let's hear how it sounds over the jam we've been doing. cool. So, couple funky notes in there. But again, the idea is that now with this mode, I'm able to move to a whole new place. Now, again, now that I've talked about that a little bit, I want to come back to talking about the two ways that the modes are applied. So again, the way that I like teaching it is to make everything one key signature, one long kind of pattern, if you will. And again, most, kind of theory purists would probably kind of, oops, hang on a sec. Where'd you go? There we go. Okay. So, how do you spell that scale? Which one, Summer? Phrygian, Ionian, Aeolian. So we got Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, and Locrian. So if you want to sound smart, just kind of spit those off and tell your friend that you just learned the Mixolydian scale in A flat, and you'll sound super smart and they'll love you for it. Last one played. That is Phrygian. P-H-Y-G-R-I-N, I think. It starts with P-H-Y. So, yeah, Phrygian scale. All right. So, again, you can kind of Google that one and get close to it, and it should come up and find it for you. So the idea of these modes is super freeing when you get it. It really, in the sense that it just frees up the whole fretboard so that you could play all over the place. Again, you just got to learn the new pattern and then move it to the note that it should start on. Again, I go in depth with this and teach it, from scratch in the program called the Modes on Guitar. It's in Rock Guitar Power. This whole concept is the same thing for what's called the soloing and lead playing program, where we just do this with pentatonic scales. The reason why that's super powerful, and that's where I would start with this, is that, yeah, so pentatonic scales are usable over almost anything, okay? Major minor scales are not as good over things like, super hard rock or just rock with power chords and simple grooves, okay? They don't work as good because not as good, and again, too dorky on the technical side. But if I'm doing a power chord, which is what most, rock songs kind of have going on. Alright? If there's my power chord, there's only two notes in it. There's a root and a fifth. And when you're soloing, basically, the notes in your scale interact with the notes in your chord. So if my chord only has two notes, there's not as many notes in a scale that work over top of it. Since pentatonic scales have 5 notes, they work good over rock because rock is based with power chords. It's kind of the simple way to kind of get it. If you have any songs that use major minor scales or major minor chords, then major minor and scales will work a little bit smoother over it. So again, it's really cool to know all of these, but it takes a while. And if you're going to start off with the pentatonic patterns, but it's the same idea, all right? A pentatonic, again, 5 notes. So there's 5 different patterns that once you learn them, all you got to know is how they relate to each other, know what key your song is in, start there, and then you could start experimenting by moving around with the new pattern, all right? Let's do this over one other key and a different type of groove. So we're going to find a different jam in a different key and go ahead and apply it. And guys, if you start having questions, pop them in, and I'll make sure, because again, I want to leave time to kind of cover whatever you want. And, I've kind of starting to cover a lot of the stuff that I wanted to dig into today. So at any point, if you guys have specific questions, type them in, and we'll kind of cover them for you. And I'll end today with playing a tune or two for you. All right, so let's try one. This jam is called the E minor percussive jam. Let me switch to my acoustic too, just for fun and mixing it up. All right, here we go. Okay, so this one's called E minor percussive jam, and as the name implies, we're in the key of E minor. So, if we start there, all right, we got our E minor, and we also have, if we do G major, so again, if I'm on E minor, all right, what we do to find our major is go up in pitch, 3 frets, 1, 2, 3. right? So the note is G. So if we now try just jamming with E minor and G major, let's hear what it sounds like. There's my G major. Now I'll shift up to E minor. Alright, so as you can see, those are kind of just grooving really good. I don't need to know the name of every note that I play. You know, that's something that makes guitar, again, very simple and easy. A lot easier than people might think. You know, if you're playing something like saxophone or trumpet, you know, you really need to know every note you're playing, and you need to know the key signature and everything else, because it's not as pattern-oriented as guitar. You know, you could find patterns in anything that you do or play or any instrument, but guitar is really the king of instruments for patterns, okay? Piano is definitely, you know, not as pattern-oriented, but there are some keys and some scales that have the same pattern, but still, nothing like guitar. And it's one of the things that makes guitar a lot easier than people think. It's just a matter of if you want to play the fast, flashy, technical stuff, there's a lot more to learning that and doing it well, which we could definitely cover in another lesson. But for today, you know, I just wanted to touch upon, you know, some of these ideas that everyone was kind of asking about. So let's jam a little bit more. Now let's talk about that Phrygian scale. So if we're in the key of E minor, we have our G major or E minor. Those are two relatives, all right? So again, to find the Phrygian, we're going to want to look to the third note of the major scale, all right? I always like telling people, use the major scale as your home base. So even if your key signature is in a minor key signature, figure out what the relative major would be, and that's your 1, if you will. In other words, G would be 1 in this case. So the third note of a G major scale is going to be B. So if we're on B and use our Phrygian scale, and again, I'm not going to go over these patterns now, but they're in, you could look them up online, go to Rock Guitar Power, and you could check them out there, or even if you Google them, you can find them pretty much anywhere. So if we play B Phrygian, we're playing the same scale, in the same notes as G major, and the same notes as E minor. So let's hear how it sounds over this jam. Cool. So as you can tell, it works really good, sounding smooth, and yeah, that's kind of the basic idea. Again, I can kind of really go in depth with that, but we're going to keep it, you know, just to that concept about how, you know, using the scales and modes can open up the guitar in so many ways if you're playing the lead. And even if these are just finger exercises for you, you know, the best way I teach people to get these under your fingers is just go up and down, up and down. All right. Then if you want to start connecting them, go, you know, the best way is to, let's pick the minor scale and the major scale. Let's say we're in A minor. We're going to go down the minor scale and then shift and come back up the major in C. So in other words, and then if we shift up, and you can hear how when I end on that note, everything sounds finished. All right, that's our tonic. That's where everything sounds done. So there's a kind of simple concept about how to take these scales and start using them to expand the fretboard more. All right. So cool. There's your concept. Again, you could really dork out on that stuff, which I love, but I didn't want to kind of go too deep. Does anybody have questions on that? Does that kind of make sense? I'll kind of shift to maybe playing a tune or two for you, but we got some time left, so if there's anything that you guys want to know, learn, have questions on, type them in, and I'll cover them for you. If not, let me go ahead and play a tune for you in the meantime. If you have anything in the last 15 minutes or so. The other thing too is I am recording this on my end, and I think the Tavamo guys are recording it, so we'll look about doing a replay and all that, or figure that out at some point, and I'll let you know via email. Alright, here we go. Hang on a sec. So, I've been doing some of that without even knowing. There you go. It's a bass. Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, again, very pattern-oriented, and the other thing, too, that happens a lot that's a good sign is a lot of times people will pick it up by ear and not know what they're doing. And a lot of times, that's really cool. Well, all the time, because, number one, if you use your ear, it's a really good tool to develop. It's going to make you that much better of a player. When you understand what you're doing, you can imagine how much more it opens things up. People are sometimes kind of scared of understanding too much because they think they'll kind of, inhibit their creativity, or I don't want to know too much because then I'll think too much. It's a valid idea, but believe me, once you kind of understand the nuts and bolts of this, I've had students that I'll talk these techniques through, get them to understand it, and then in a month or two, they come back and play the most insanely awesome stuff just because of the way their mind wraps around the concept, and then they see all these patterns connect, and they're like, wow, I could just do all this stuff. So it really blows me away, and people really get this, and then take it and understand it, and then, go to that level of saying, look what I could do with this. That's what's really fun, that I find super exciting to work with students when they take it and just do their own thing. I could sit here all day and teach you patterns that I like using, and I do that in the Pro Jam and a lot of other places too on my sites, but what's really cool is if you get the basic concepts and just understand how they work and then go wherever you want with them. So that's what, guitar is all about, is having that freedom to say, look what I could do, here's something new I just found. And understanding these patterns really opens things up. Alright, let me play a tune for you guys since there's no questions at the moment, but again, send them in if you have them. So this is my newest guitar. One of the things that I love most about playing guitar is studying different styles. I'm more of a studio guy. I record a lot and produce a lot, and I love gigging and playing live, but I do a lot more in the studio, and I love learning complex stuff. It's really fun for me. And one of the new styles of music that I've been studying is fingerstyle. So this is one of the guitars I recently bought to really help me study that style, because it definitely helps when you have a guitar that's built for a certain style of music. I got my nylon here for classical stuff and other stuff, my electrics and all that other fun stuff. But this guitar is a little bit more built for fingerstyle, so I use a thumb pick. The fretboard's a little bit thicker, and this is actually a 12 fret guitar. Usually guitars, the body meets at the 14th fret, so there's 2 more frets before this happens. But what that does is it shortens the scale, which basically makes the strings a little bit easier and lighter, and just changes the kind of size of the body, so obviously it's a little bit smaller. But anyways, one of the absolute reigning kings of fingerstyle is Tommy Emmanuel. He's absolutely jaw-dropping, amazing. If you get a chance to see him live, go do it, pay whatever it costs. Otherwise, you can just check him out on YouTube and online. But I've been studying some of his tunes, and this is one of his songs called Countrywide. So we'll see if we could do it somewhat of justice. Cool. So that was called Countrywide by Tommy Emmanuel. So getting there, one of those tunes that is super fun to play, and as you kind of learn these songs that are technical, it just takes time to kind of get inside of them, figure out how you want to perform them. But that one's becoming more and more fun to play and more comfortable. So cool. Thanks, guys. Good. Awesome. Well, anybody else got any questions? I got a few more minutes. I was planning on hanging out. So again, and I'll make some other notes as we're kind of wrapping up. So if you like this, I did sign up or set up a session for next week, same time, which will be Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And I'm going to be looking to probably try one out on the weekend. When I sent out a survey, kind of got a really mixed amount of people saying they want them on the weekdays, on the weekends. So I know I'll definitely try a weekend one to accommodate people with other time schedules and all that. But yeah, send in. You could reach me. Again, I answer my own emails. If you want to reach me, mike@rockguitarpower.com or mike@superguitarlicks.com. Or if you go to those websites, you could check out the contact pages, and I'm usually the one that gets those, or they get forwarded to me. So definitely you could reach me there. Facebook, I'm on Facebook.com/superguitarlicks. You could check that site out. But check out and come next Wednesday if you're interested. Share this. I'm really excited again to do these and to catch on, to really make sure we kind of spread the word about Tivamo. Again, I think it's a great service. I'm super excited to kind of help these guys kick this off and show what's possible. So tomorrow night, check out my good friend Tegan Ward, who's going to be in the same studio, sitting right here tomorrow night, and have a great session for her just performing, which will be really fun. We got, I'm in the studio, so we're going to have a nice studio sound for her and really make sure that her performance sounds good and you can enjoy it. She's an amazing singer-songwriter. She's probably going to do like half hour to an hour show, so that'll be really fun to check out. Check out Ed Eason, and I believe he does most of his sessions on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, or I think it is. Might be 10, but check it out. It's on the schedule there. All right, cool, awesome. Very good. All right, guys, if you have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, shoot me, find me in those places, rockguitarpower.com, Super Guitar Licks. You can get in for free for a trial on both those sites on the homepage, or there's a tab that shows free trial, and you can get in there, check out all the lessons if you're not there already. I know a lot of people here might already be from those sites, but, my goal here in these lessons is to just answer your questions personally and find out what you're struggling with. So there you go. Cool. All right, guys. So you got it. Cool. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to sign off. We'll see you guys really soon. Have fun. Keep practicing. Get in touch. And we'll see you next week or very soon after. All right, guys. Later.